Welcome to the Bodacious Women in Cannabis podcast, the show where the bold and brilliant women cannabis business leaders share their journey and their expertise. Here's your host, Susan Burns.
Hi, and welcome to Bodacious Women in Cannabis. I am Susan Burns, your podcast host. As a lawyer by day, nothing delights me more than highlighting bodacious women in cannabis. And today, we are particularly thrilled to be having a conversation with Allie Faver, and Allie is the General Counsel for CBD Kratom. Welcome, Allie.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. So, Allie, you're a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. So generally people think it's going to be a boring conversation, but it's a cannabis conversation. So it can't be boring. Tell us about your journey as a lawyer and coming into the cannabis world and what attracted you to CBD Kratom and now, a little bit about how you got there.
Sure. So I have a bit of a unique story, I'd like to say. So born and raised in New York, undergrad, law school, all in New York. Went to work for a national management side labor and employment law firm right out of law school. Did that for several years. And like COVID affected everyone, it really made me reevaluate what was important for my professional growth and just personal interests. And what I realized I loved most about my job was being a business partner to the businesses or companies, whoever our client was. So I took that time during COVID to really assess, my whole life, not just professionally, where I was living, what I wanted out of my future. My boyfriend, now husband, at the time, he went completely remote. It's like, let's just pick somewhere to move. Like, we have this opportunity. Wherever you get a job first, whatever piques your interest, that's where we're going to go. So we thought about it for a few months. It's the infamous detailed spreadsheet that had a bunch of factors
You
that
didn't.
listed. Yes, that
I
had a
love
bunch
it.
of
I've never been
factors.
able to do that. Good for you. Okay.
Yeah. So we landed. St. Louis was one of the top 3 cities, and I applied to CBD Kratom, which is the largest cannabis and kratom retailer in the United States. Something I had
Did not know
no
that.
background in, just from being a casual user of the product. That's really the only background I had. And after meeting with the company president and vice president, I just felt like it would be an incredible fit. And while I had some uphill battles in terms of learning the products and the industry, I knew that I could be a very good business partner. So got the job and moved to St. Louis 3 weeks later. It's my first time living somewhere not in New York, being in the Midwest. It was a big culture shock, but now I've been there for over 3 years and fighting the daily fight for the hemp industry in the cannabis world.
Oh, there you go. Well, tell us a little bit more about that daily fight for the hemp
So,
industry and the cannabis world.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, as everyone is very well aware in the industry, there's both the issues we deal with on a regulatory level, whether it's the state level, whether it's the impending farm bill, whether it's at a local level, just really dealing with educating a lot of regulators and lawmakers, just what our products are, what they do, the benefit of common sense regulation. So we have that front that we're dealing with. And then I know some of your other guests have spoke about it, so I won't belabor the point, but the issues that the hemp industry has been fighting against the marijuana industry, just really trying to make it a come one, come all, whereas we've seen the marijuana industry is funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars into their lobbying efforts to monopolize the cannabis plant as a whole, to make it really inaccessible for a bunch of small businesses to retain their products and livelihood. So just really
Ellie,
dealing with all of that.
talk a little bit more about that if you would, because I think that's a point that gets lost is how does that, I think there's this sort of assumption that once marijuana is legalized, or cannabis as they like to call it, once marijuana is legalized, then, we don't need hemp products. They can just go away. So you made what I think is a really important point about that they're 2 distinct product lines and what the impact is on small small businesses that are in the hemp industry. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a great cocktail conversation. Discuss with my family and friends. It's all the rage. So what's interesting is we have the issue of what is federally legal and federally illegal. The cannabis plant is the genus of the plant, and what distinguishes what's federally legal and what's illegal is the percentage of Delta 9 THC on a dry weight basis. If you have a plant that has above 0.3% Delta 9 THC on a dry weight basis, that's what everyone knows as marijuana. Below
And
that
that's
number,
what's the Delta 9 is what's regarded as the psychoactive component of the plant that gets people high.
yes, at
There
certain
are others,
levels.
but yeah, okay.
Yep. And then everything else, if it doesn't meet that definition, is considered hemp. So you have the whole gamut. You have everything from non-psychotropic CBD products to what everyone's reading in the news probably about Delta 8, Delta 10, THCA, THCP, then there's THCV. There's over 100 cannabinoids that are actually in the cannabis plant, and Congress chose one to focus on to make that distinguishment. And right now, that's the arena we're all playing in. That's the federal laws, and granted, we have the state laws and regulations peppered in there, but that's the major difference. Is we, meaning CBD Kratom, we only have hemp-derived cannabis products, so we're operating in a federally legal space, whereas medical marijuana are operating in technically a federally illegal space. Now, we want the whole plant to be available, right? We want everyone to have access, common sense regulations, right? We don't want kids having access to this. We want consumers to know what they are consuming, have transparent labeling, testing to make sure there's no pesticides, heavy metals, that it is what it says it is. The potency is the level that it claims to be. But we're just dealing with a lot, the marijuana industry deals with a lot of burdensome over-regulatory issues, and instead of fighting those issues, they're fighting their hemp brothers, so to speak. And that's, if we just joined forces and helped each other, I think would get a lot further on the business side, small businesses, the farmers, everyone who their livelihood depends on this, and also the consumers would really benefit. So
More product, more choice.
yep.
But so are you suggesting that the hemp industry is for smaller players, whereas the marijuana industry is for bigger players? Because what we grew up with was the marijuana industry was smaller, unless you're talking about large scale like cartels and things like that. But it was, who you knew in the neighborhood who got it from their friend who had a farm. And those weren't, marijuana wasn't typically a large scale players. So where does that small business thing come in the hemp that you referenced?
I think that's a fabulous point, and I think it's one that's very overlooked. I think the narrative has shifted. I think marijuana was how you said it to be. It was these really small players, and they've now since grown into these corporate conglomerates, these multi-state operators, these MSOs. You see that there are these giant corporations, and now businesses have filled that void where the small businesses used to be, so to speak. So that's what you really see. You don't really see small business people or energy in the marijuana space. It's really all these giant conglomerates now. And what, big pharma used to be against marijuana is now big marijuana against hemp. You're really seeing that paradigm shift. And it's unfortunate, but it's pretty cyclical.
And do you think there's, you said cyclical, and I'm going to get cynical. Do you think there's any element of big pharma in the big mad marijuana space? Because what I'm seeing in Minnesota, at least, which is where I am located, is that the control is really we have two licensed medical dispensaries, and that's where the control is.
Yeah. So I think, big pharma is obviously losing some money to the herbal side of just the medicinal industry in general, and that does include marijuana and hemp. I think they'll try to keep their hands on and control whatever they can, right? If you're going to let all these small businesses offer choice and prosper, that takes that out of big pharma's hands. So what are they going to do? They're going to try to control and gatekeep whatever they can, as we've seen, right? It sounds a little conspiracy theory-esque, but I think there's some really valid points in there. And like you said, Minnesota is one of those states where you can really blatantly see the structure. I'm headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri, so we're dealing with our own fight at the moment in the legislature and dealing with the state of Missouri's marijuana group and dealing with that, them trying to gatekeep those products and eliminate consumer choice. And it's what people don't realize too is it not only affects retailers, right? Everyone just thinks of the retailers because that's where they get their finished goods. This is a huge impact on farmers, huge. Probably them. Yeah, probably them more than retailers. And they have a lot more regulations that they need to abide by. They have a lot more procedures. Fiscally, maybe not the same demand, but they are the ones that are impacted by this significantly. And I feel like they get left out of the conversation pretty often. So that's something I would really want people to remember as well.
Yeah, I think about that a lot because, I've been working with, I've worked both representing businesses in marijuana and hemp, but in the hemp industry, I've seen, the regulations, they keep trying to squish the hemp industry, and and I'm talking about the manufacturers and retailers, and it seems like they get always creative. Like now in Minnesota, they're saying that the law is supposed to be interpreted that you can only sell Delta 9 edibles with D8, D9, or CBD, and I'm like, so you want to take away CBN, CBG, all that, everything, but where does that go? That means the only for the hemp farmer. Then they'll figure something out. They'll figure out a way to make the market work for them. Consumers suffer in hemp farmers, so there was this big push after the Farm Bill in 2018 to support hemp farmers and get these state programs going and convert to hemp. It's the great plant, it's good for the soil. It's all this stuff, and then sorry,
Yep.
No market for your product. Oh well, you can make it into hempcrete or something. Well, there's no market for that yet.
Right, and
It's
even
really crazy.
the hemp feed is, I think, the next big opportunity for farmers, and we're seeing that movement right now at the federal level. It's the needle starting to move, so I hope for them that's the case. But yeah, everyone in every part of this industry, when I say this industry, I mean the hemp industry, is suffering, having to have these constant battles to give consumers the choice. And most players in this industry, the good ones, the ones who want the whole industry to succeed and want their consumers to have choice, want common sense regulations. And that's, I think, an issue that gets lost as well. Like being in these committee hearings at the legislature, both sides are saying the same thing. Both sides are playing up the safety and the need for regulation. It's just, unfortunately, big marijuana wants to monopolize the industry to hopefully make back the money that they are all significantly losing on a day-to-day basis due to their tax scheme that they have to abide by in their regulations. It's terrible. I think it's awful, but don't take us down with you just because you're dealing with a bad situation. Let us try to help you fix those, not put us all down in a hole.
Yeah, it seems that always struck me from the beginning is like we're suffering because we have adverse tax consequences, so everybody has to suffer with us. No, bring us with you to fight against that. I mean,
Right.
to me, it's ridiculously insane that you can't deduct business expense because it's federally illegal business, but you got to pay taxes on all the income. I mean, how crazy is that? It's just
Yeah,
crazy.
it is.
So let's fight to get that changed instead of fighting to get hemp out of there. And talk about, because you're in a consumer product industry, like hemp consumer product. I don't know your products, and you can talk a little bit about them if you would. But I think for most hemp product consumers are like lower doses of psychoactive substance or maybe no psychoactive substance. So if you go into, I was just in Nevada for a conference and I went into a dispensary there, and the smallest dose gummy in the dispensary was 50 milligrams.
Wow.
I don't know what that would make me high for 50 days. To me, I just, and I mean, I grew up in the day and we had peace, love, dope and all that kind of stuff. So I never was a stranger to the plant. And so what about consumers if you do ease out, if you do get rid of the hemp industry, talk about your products and the demographic for your products and what does that all lead to?
No, absolutely. So I think what's unique about our business model is we don't have one type of demographic we serve. So we met with other businesses where their demographic is an older population that's really only starting to wade into the CBD waters, and that's really their bread and butter. Then we have people who operate closer to dispensaries and really sell only high potency smokables, let's say. We have the whole gamut. We really believe in giving people their choice in delivery method. So that's smokables. That's, if people have GI issues, they can't be having edibles or even beverages. So sometimes smoking, which passes the GI system mostly, helps people who have those chronic conditions, perhaps. We have edibles, we have beverages, we have topicals, tinctures, you name it. So really whatever anyone's comfortable with. And then we also offer an array of products. So we have, the CBD, the CBN, the CBG, the CBC. We also sell Delta 8 THC, Delta 9 THC below the 0.3% on a dry weight basis. We have THCO, HHCO. We also do sell some other products such as Kratom and Kava and Amanita, but in speaking about cannabis, that would probably be some of the largest of what we sell. And then in terms of milligram levels, we're really trying to appeal to all of our demographics. So we actually just brought in some microdosing gummies that are 1 to 2 milligrams per gummy, and it's kind of like a snacking bag. So that way, who wants to eat one gummy? So that way you can have 5 or 10 gummies, but still get the effect of a 5 or 10 milligram if you were to take only one 5 or 10 milligram gummy. We also have some higher milligram products and by higher, I mean 25 milligrams, 30 milligrams, depending on the beverage or edible or smokable. And we really see the gamut. We see the older individuals who are coming in for their CBD mints and their topicals, which is great. We see the people who are coming in who are diehard on their daily walk home pre-rolls that really help them wind down after a day. We see people come in before the weekends for their high strength edibles, or, people who just have a higher tolerance. I have individuals that I work with, that I'm friends with, that 20 milligrams doesn't affect them in the slightest. I personally am 5 milligrams and I'm good. So we want to not be pigeonholed into one type of consumer or one type of product. We want it to be a welcoming space for everyone, right? We want it to be that environment. And I think what's really interesting that you hit the nail on, and what most regulators are not realizing, is dispensaries they act like they want the hemp products, but they don't. You cannot get a 5 milligram beverage into a dispensary if you wanted to. It takes up too much shelf space, and that's not the consumer that's going in there. So they're going to take microdosing gummies. It's not going to happen. So it's just this appearance that they're putting on that, we want the hemp too. We're going to put it in our dispensaries. It's not going to happen. And all these small businesses that are manufacturing the microdosing products or the beverages that are 5 milligrams, they're being sold the sweet story, but it's not what we're seeing in the distribution world. We work with distributors to see what the appetite is, and it's not there. So that's what I think is really intriguing as well.
It is. And even in Minnesota, they had in 2022, they expressly permitted hemp infused beverages. So that market went nuts, and it was great because you could buy it. It was ubiquitous. You could go to the grocery store and get it. You could go to a dispensary and buy it. You can buy it anywhere. So, but the limit was 5 milligrams. And so you had some people manufacturing with 2 milligrams or 5 milligrams THC with, so many of 1 to 2 CBD, THC to CBD or things like that. So there was a variety of product for everybody. Then they increase it to 10 milligrams. So you see a lot more of 10 milligrams. So to me, I won't buy it because it's a waste. I can't do 10.
Right. And that's the
I
thing too,
just
is
can't,
we're
So
coming up with so many different options for our consumers. So whether it's a resealable cap or whether it's, getting into the local bars to give people a non-alcoholic option where, they can go 1-to-1 with their friends who are drinking beers and seltzers and not just have one and have to sit there the rest of the night while their friends are continuing to consume beverages because, they've consumed their cap. So I think there really is a market for these low THC beverages because if you treat it like a 1-to-1 in terms of effects, it gives people the opportunity to keep up that social interaction without having to sit there twiddling their thumbs at the bar or at a restaurant while their friends are continuing to sip on their beverages. And what's great, and especially in Minnesota, you have the accessibility in Total Wine. Like that is changing the game. It's completely taking the stigma, I think, and really squashing it from what we've seen even just 5-10 years ago. The stigma is really what is one of the biggest hurdles, the education, right? A lot of these legislators, especially the ones in more remote areas, or the ones who maybe are only reading headlines, salacious headlines, they don't know. They don't know about the industry. They don't know about the impact of what these bills are that they're pushing. They have no clue the
I think that's
ramifications are.
exactly right on. And I mean, as you and I both know, and you suggested that when we started this conversation, it's a huge learning curve.
It is.
And I mean, I learn more every day, which is part of what fascinates. It's such a nerdy niche, it
No,
just
I love it.
fascinates me. But there's so much to learn. And I think that the mindset is still, if it has anything to do with cannabis, which equates to marijuana in the minds of most people, is, it's stoners. It's people that want to get high, like high, not just have a glass of wine high.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot, we've got a long way to go, but I hope the hemp industry survives in the process.
Me too. I mean, seeing what's going on this week in Florida alone
Isn't that
is
crazy?
truly, it's terrifying because, people's livelihoods are at stake and it's not this you just read the salacious headlines about an 8-year-old who got access to THC gummies, and good players are not selling to children. They're having ID verification at the point of sale. This is not going to stop those instances where the headlines are happening. The laws and regulations that are being put forth in these states like Florida right now, that's not going to stop that. That's not the solution.
The crazy thing is, how does getting rid of a lower dose product prevent children from overdosing on product? I mean, that's also crazy.
It is. And you go into any Senate or House committee hearing in any state, and that's the first thing that's brought up is a salacious headline like that, or 3 teenagers in, high school had to go to the hospital. And it's terrible. That should not happen. It shouldn't.
Well, of course.
But shutting down hemp businesses who don't let anyone who's under 18 in any way, that's not going to stop that problem. And I don't know how people are often seeing that, to be quite frank. I don't know if they're looking to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole and just hope for the best.
I think it's good lobbying on the other side. I don't think it's
anything
that really makes sense. Or
look at
good in quotes.
if you look at the wine and beer industry, for example, I think it's a really good comparison. You can't sell beer direct to consumer, but you can sell wine to direct to consumer. Why is that, right? Like my husband can't order his favorite beer from this brewery in California that he loves. He can't get it unless it's at a Total Wine or something here in Missouri. But I could order my favorite wine from Sonoma direct to consumer. What's the difference? There is no difference. The wine industry just had a better lobbyist at the time.
There you go.
So that's what I like to compare it to.
Yeah. I know nothing about Kratom. Tell me about that. Is that a cannabinoid, or where does it come from?
Yeah, no. So it's a completely separate plant.
Okay.
It is native to Southeast Asia. It reacts to the opioid receptors as a partial agonist. So depending on the way it's grown, so sun, soil, rain, things like that, it can change the impact the plant has. So that's what creates the strains. So you'll see a red strain, a green strain, or a white strain in people. What does that mean? And depending on how it was grown with all those factors, affects the effect on the consumer who has it. So it honestly, it's the leaf ground up. It's mostly in cannabis a lot you see it extracted, right? The cannabinoids from the plant, unless you have a pre-roll or you're using flour. Kratom a lot of the times is you see like the powder, it's just the ground up leaf, or you'll see it in a capsule and it really tastes like dirt. But it has it
Like
could have
like beets. It's good for you.
right. So it could have a stimulant effect, it could have a pain relieving effect, it could have a sleep aid effect. It really depends on the person's metabolism and the strain. And, there needs to be a little bit more research done out there, but it's a cousin to both the coffee and kava plant. So coffee,
Okay.
kava, and kratom are all plants that are indigenous to Southeast Asia that all operate very similarly, right? Like caffeine is a stimulant and I go through caffeine withdrawals. If I don't have coffee after 2 days in a row, I have a horrible headache. So it's one of those things where people who use kratom truly feel the benefits. I'd say we have a very, very loyal kratom customer base. And in 2016, the DEA actually put out a notice to see if it could become a Schedule 1 drug. And there was such massive pushback. There was a bipartisan letter in Congress, which when do you see Republicans and Democrats agreeing on anything, to tell them to pull back and not schedule it. And then it was not scheduled. So it's same thing, the kratom industry. There's various groups out there, including the American Kratom Association, that really advocate for common sense regulation. So a handful of states currently have what's noted as the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. So it lays out percentages of the mitragine, which is the active that causes the effect in the human body, labeling, testing, similar things to what you see in the cannabis industry. So that's a whole different type of consumer that we see, but it's one that is very passionate and very vocal about this product.
Okay, well, good. There, I got a little education on that. I know it's not Bodacious Women and Kratom, but I wanted to get that in there because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, and you just add a little nugget in there. Just give a little extra bonus.
There you go. And so I also wanted to ask you, I want to be respectful of your time too, because I only booked you for a half an hour, but if I could ask you two more questions. One is, along the way, as a female in both the legal industry and the cannabis industry, any particular hurdles and any particular advice you have for listeners who are in the industry, seeking to get in the industry, seeking to advance in the industry, or any little stories, nuggets, gems?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is still an extremely male-dominated industry, both the legal field and the cannabis industry. However, I really do see the tides turning. Our vice president is this strong, educated, smart female leader. She's the best leader I've probably ever worked for in my professional career. And even the industry groups we're part of, a lot of the times the presidents of those industry groups are women. And they're the ones that are really hammering down, getting into the brunt of these conversations. I mean, you still see it, right, at these trade shows, and I've been to them. If you're not going out for whiskey and cigars, and it's still a little bit can be unprofessional in terms of the industry as a whole. So it's hard to find like-minded professionals who want these common sense regulations. So we still have a lot of room to grow in the industry, to move in that direction, to make this an easier place for women to prosper. But I really think we're starting to get there. We're really seeing it, and I'm excited. I'm excited about it. And the legal field too, you see like 50% of law school classes nowadays are women, and it's amazing. It's incredible.
That hasn't changed much over the years, I'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah, the percentage of women versus men, but it's the staying power in the industry. In the profession, yeah. So
that is true. You're right. I do see that.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Bring me back for that one. Yes,
Yeah.
you're right. You're absolutely right.
Bodacious women in the legal profession. That'll be the next one. But
Yes.
do you have any insider tips or anything you want to say about pursuing the
Just
profession?
if you are interested in it, you got to just do it. It's one of those things. Before I jumped in, I considered it for a while, right? If I were to ever leave this industry and go to a different in-house job, for example, am I going to have that stigma? Am I going to be rejected because of the industry that I worked in? And you know what? This is a little off the cuff, but like, screw everyone. Just this is what you're passionate about, and you want to be at the forefront of something novel and exciting and something that everyone could benefit from in one way or another, and giving consumer choice and being at the forefront of both the industry advancing, but also the legal front. It is changing every 12 hours. And it is so exciting to be, one of the first people on the ground to be testifying at committee hearings or helping craft these laws and negotiating with legislators. It is so exciting. And I just said, you just got to get over that fear of the stigma and the hurdle of it and just go for it.
Awesome. I love that. And I agree. So maybe that leads nicely into the next question, which is our signature question here. What's your unique brand of bodaciousness, Allie? What makes you bodacious?
So I did look this up as well because I was like,
a lot of people do.
Because you get the right, people know it as the more stigmatized word. So when I looked it up, the root is bold and audacious, and they kind of mean the same thing the way people use them nowadays. And I think just the willingness to jump in head first, and me personally, who's someone with a legal background, I'm more risk adverse, and I'm more want to play out the whole situation of the potentials before making decisions. I think being in this industry has really forced me to be bold and to be okay making mistakes and just learning to quote unquote fail fast and pivot and think on your feet. And I think the not being afraid and just being okay making mistakes and learning from them and learning fast, I think that's what makes all of us women in this industry bodacious, just bold, risk-taking women.
Awesome. Hey, so now you've given me some homework. I have to go. I didn't know there was another side to the word bodacious. I'll have to go research that. But it sounds maybe spicy. So, well, it's been such a pleasure to have you, and I've enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sure our listeners want to know where to find you. Tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. I love being here as well. Thank you for having me. You can email me at Allie, ALLIE, at M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, G as in girl, city, CITY.com. You can visit us at CBD Kratom, that's CBDKRATOM.com if you want to learn more about our retail business and the products we offer. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, Plot Twist. It's under Alexandra, ALEXANDRA, Faver, FAVER.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allie.
Thank you.